Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Good for the Soul. This is episode number 9. In this episode, I sat down with Professor Joel Townsend. He is the owner and main coach over at Gracie Baja, Northeast Seattle. This was actually my first time training at a Gracie Baja location, so I was excited. We have a mutual friend that put us in touch, which was cool because I had actually sent my sister over there to go get some training because she was in that area, and there was a female for her to match up and really get some good training in and a good exposure to his jiu-jitsu. So we were able to have some mutual connections, and so it was great training. Joel's one of those guys that's been around forever, right? So we started talking, and again, he knows my coach Ivan, and he goes way back to the early days of jiu-jitsu, and some of the stuff we didn't talk about, right? He was in Brazil going back and forth with the guys from in the early days of jiu-jitsu, so it was really cool. It was a great experience, right? I really enjoyed training with him, learning some technique. We got to roll and flow, and it was awesome. We talked some jiu-jitsu. So if you're in that area, it's Gracie Baja, Northeast Seattle. It's in Wedgwood, which was actually cool because that's where I grew up. And that's where I spent most of my childhood, in that Wedgwood area. And that school opened there, I don't know exactly when, a couple of years back, 3 or 4 years maybe. So that was cool to be able to go train in that neighborhood. Guys, Joel's a great guy, super fun to train with. So if you're in that area, again, go check it out, Gracie Baja, Northeast Seattle. And we'll get into it in a second. But before we do, I just want to remind you guys, go to jockofuel.com, get yourself some supplements. Here I got with me today the greens, which I just had my green shake. Those essential superfoods, super good for you, right? What else did I grab? Oh yeah, the joint warfare. I take this every day. It's funny because that's one of those things where if I forget to take it or I don't show enough discipline to make sure I'm stocked up enough so I don't go without having it, 2 or 3 days off of that, my joints start to ache, right? Your hands from gripping the gis and elbows and shoulders. Taking this every day for years now, right? And it helps tremendously. So go to jockofuel.com and get yourself 10% off using the code GOODFORTHESOUL at checkout. And without further ado, guys, here we go with Professor Joel Townsend. Professor Joel, thank you so much for sitting down with me. The theme of the channel is we're talking good for the soul, and obviously jiu-jitsu is good for the soul. So I appreciate you having me out here. Great lesson today. I love this academy. Great culture. It was a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you for coming.
Yeah, it was awesome. First off, where did your love for jiu-jitsu come from?
Yeah, I started training jiu-jitsu in '97 under Alfredo Abalog. At the time, he was a purple belt under Hoist. And I actually met, how it happened is I met a couple of his students, and I tend to be a little bit on the smaller side, and they were actually a little bit smaller than me, and they just worked me over. So I was like, I gotta go and check that out, and that's where it started. And in March it'll be 25 years of nonstop training. So
cool. Well, one of my goals is to excite people about jiu-jitsu and draw them in, with this content we put out. What specifically was it for you when you walked on the mats for the first time that really excited you about what jiu-jitsu was?
Well, first and foremost, because I had been kind of a bullied child when I was younger, I knew that grappling was a good way of self-defense for me. So I kind of taught myself a little bit of grappling from watching pro wrestling when I was younger. Then I took junior high wrestling. What really got me excited about it was the idea that a smaller person could actually overtake and defeat a bigger person. And then, as I learned more, every time I would take a class, I'd find out things. What excited me the most was what I didn't know. Because every time I would learn something, I'd be like, wow, I couldn't wait to train and try it on a bigger guy or another person. And I think when I started training the first year, we could do a class 3 times a week in the morning. We would train twice every day in the evening. So sometimes I could train, 15 times in 1 week. That's pretty hard on your body, but I was a young guy, so I did it. But yeah, I still get excited about jiu-jitsu today because, for everybody that does it, they realize that it's kind of always evolving. What I learned is kind of like dinosaur stuff. Now everyone wants to be inverted and look like a breakdancer, which I really wish I could do it, but it's tough for me. So
No, I love it. You're speaking to my soul of, hey, I walk on a new mat today, and I've seen the butterfly sweep before, but then the details you guys are showing today, I'm picking up little stuff that certain angles, it's always keeping my curiosity. So hopefully it was similar for you throughout that process.
Definitely.
Yeah. maybe at this stage in your jiu-jitsu journey, in total, and maybe then if you were competing, and now, how would you say, or how would you describe what jiu-jitsu means to you at this stage in your life?
Well, I would say that it's kind of gone full circle, right, in kind of an interesting way. So when I first started training jiu-jitsu, I wanted to be a fighter, right? I think a lot of people got exposed to jiu-jitsu through the UFC, right? Mm-hmm. And so I thought that was as close to pro wrestling, right? So I always was really fascinated with pro wrestling. So at that time, I looked at like pro wrestling is now real. And when I first saw it, I was really interested in Ken Shamrock because he looked the most like a pro wrestler. So I wanted to do jiu-jitsu to be a fighter. And then very seldomly there was actually jiu-jitsu tournaments. At the time, there was MMA fights quite often actually. Yeah. And later on, it was almost every weekend here in Washington there was one. But now it's kind of changed a little bit, right? The interest is more now focused on the gi, the no gi. It's really focused on the grappling, where before it was just a component of an MMA fighter. So now I think a lot of people, they just skip past being involved in that type of stuff and really just focus on being the best grappler they can be. So it's really reignited my interest in jiu-jitsu. Some of the tournaments, the formats, the level of competition just continues to get better and better. And what's the most interesting to me now that I'm older, right? When I started, I was half my age. But when I see guys that they can train for just a couple of years and they can be right there in the deep end with the guys who've been around for a while. Mm-hmm. So the level just continues to get better and better. And unfortunately, it means I have to double up on my efforts just to hang.
Yeah, that's a process of evolution, right? From your perspective, what is the hardest thing for man or woman to overcome to step onto the mats for the first time?
I think everybody, has their own form of insecurity one way or the other, right? I think everyone has to start, when they train jiu-jitsu, they gotta kind of start with the goal in mind. Is this for recreation? Is this for sport? Is this for self-defense? What is it I'm doing it for, right? And then you ask yourself, okay, so how serious am I about that, right? Because jiu-jitsu for me, it's really, it's the love of the sport, being around the people. I mean, that's probably the best part, is really the connection you make with your teammates and people that aren't even in your own academy, people at tournaments, people faces you see. That's a very rewarding thing, watching people progress over the years when they, go down that road. But I think if you're apprehensive and shy in regular life, going through the process of showing up, in a strange place and doing something that might not feel comfortable, on a consistent basis will change you as a person, right? Not just physically, because definitely physically you're gonna see all kinds of benefit, but you're gonna actually change as a person. You're gonna have a lot more self-confidence. You're gonna be a little bit more secure, and also it's gonna make you a lot more humble, because one thing that even those who feel really tough. Well, if you don't know, you don't know. When you step on the mat, you're gonna, there's always somebody, I mean, you could be, looking at the other guy with a target on his back. He's the guy in front of you. But just remember, if you're doing that, there's a guy behind you. He's got a target on your back. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think, or what is your approach to drawing women into jiu-jitsu? Different, or is it different than drawing men into jiu-jitsu? Because I think we naturally, testosterone-filled men, may be a little more attracted to jiu-jitsu and combat sports in itself, whereas I have an opinion that jiu-jitsu is probably more important for women. So do you cater maybe your classes differently, or if a woman walks through the door for the first time, what is your discussion with her like, as opposed to potentially a man?
Well, I think every person's different. When it comes to females, I think sometimes a lot of them, they might not think, right? And that's not all of them, but there's some, when you speak to them, they don't think that they could do it, right? Mm-hmm. But then what you do is you get them to come and try. And then the thing is because Jiu-Jitsu is a series of techniques, so it works for everyone. If you do those techniques, it works for you. It doesn't matter if you're stronger, taller, shorter, heavier, lighter. It's a technique. The technique works on everybody. Mm-hmm. You just have to get them to do it, and if they feel like, they develop confidence in it, then apprehension goes away. We're very fortunate that we have a very good female student here. When other females come here, they're like, that's what I want to be like. So she's a very good example and a very good leader for the academy here.
Yeah, it's great. You can see it on the mat. Her presence is wonderful, and we're friends, so I'm glad she put us in touch so I could sit down with you. So now let's say, again, from the coaching perspective, you've seen people come and go probably for a long time. We there's the thing called the blue belt blues. As a coach, what would maybe your position be on how we could stop people from leaving the mats? They hit blue belt and they're like, cool, I made it, and you never see them again. What is some way we can retain people in jiu-jitsu, and maybe also why is that happening?
Yeah, that's a good question, because the thing is when people get to purple belt, the majority of I think they say it's right at half of the purple belts will move on to be black, but 2/3 of the people will quit after they become blue to go to purple. I think it goes back to, again, what is it that brought them in, right? If they brought it in there just to learn self-defense, well, yeah, if you're a blue belt and the guy's not training jiu-jitsu and you're in a street confrontation, you're going to be successful, right? You're certainly going to minimize any kind of damage to yourself. But if they're a competitor, they're going to continue past the blue belt stages. It really depends on the people. Some people don't have an interest in ever being a competitor. Yeah. It's just for fitness, but then life gets in the way, your family, your job, your schedule, whatnot. But the number one thing that always kept me motivated and always really looking forward to the academy is the connection I made with the people that I worked out with. It's kind of like, you could compare it to being involved in any kind of team sport. Guys in the military, right? The bonds that they make, being in battle together, it's very similar, right? So that's why, people who train together, they tend to, be friends for life, really.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So what was your personal progression from white, blue, purple into brown belt?
So, that's kind of a little bit of an up and down there. When we started training, we had a place that we could be very, very consistent and train very hard for quite a while, but then the academy moved around quite a bit. It made it just a little bit more difficult, right? So where I had a very short distance, from proximity to where I lived and worked to the academy, it became, hour away without traffic and sometimes 2 hours with traffic. So it became very difficult to train. But I still stayed very committed, but it was, it was not as frequent. But over time, eventually the academy moved back a little bit closer to me. But the thing was, the people that I train with I continued to train with always. Like, my professor, Rodrigo Lopez, who I'm a black belt under, he's my best friend. When we started training, we were just close friends. And then as time went on and he, went his own way, I followed him because, he was my main training partner. And it worked out perfectly. I never had a better training partner, and I'm still continuing to train to this day. I've been very fortunate that I had a lot of Brazilian friends very early on, people that were from Rio, so I visited Rio, and at the time I was a student of Gracie Baugh, but they were from a different academy, so I actually got to work out at multiple places. Wow. Lots of different, friendships of my friends in Brazil introduced me to a lot of very cool experiences. I met a lot of people, did a lot of things I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise just as a tourist. Yeah. So I've been very lucky in that capacity. At
that time when you went to Brazil, what was the training like and maybe culture around jiu-jitsu? Were you seeing big differences at the time between?
See, I'm glad you asked that, because what happened was the first time I went there, it was very popular, right? And then what happened was there was a shift the next time I went, where when I went there the first time, the academies were full. There was MMA and jiu-jitsu gis and the windows of malls, actually. But the next time it kind of went away. And what happened was the last time I was in Brazil, I had come back, and when you talk to some of the black belts there, they say that jiu-jitsu in Brazil really correlates with the surfing. So when the waves go out about every 5 years, 7 years, then the academies kind of thin out. But when the waves go out, the academies get full. But when the waves come back, then everyone's out at the beach. I think a lot of it had to do with UFC, quite honestly. We knew I had a lot of, and at the time when I was there the first time, there was a lot of very prominent guys, the Gracies, Vitor Belfort, things like that. And then, there was a long break after the Gracies kind of lost their fame in the UFC. And then, Jiu-Jitsu's popularity became back very popular in the United States. It really reignited it in Brazil. I've seen a couple tournaments in Brazil were very, it was very cool. Yeah.
When you were there, did you get to live that full Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu lifestyle, training and surfing and hanging out on the beach? I mean, what was that experience like for you?
I did train. I did go to the beach. I'm afraid of the water, so I wanted to do like surfing.
Okay.
Yeah. I did a lot of cool stuff. Like I said, because I was a little bit different situations. I had friends that were, like brothers to me that lived there. And so I got to assimilate with all their friends, go to their academies, and a lot of those guys, those different academies, a lot of those people now live in the United States in different places. So I've done some pretty interesting things. I didn't realize at the time how fortunate I actually was.
Yeah.
But looking back at it, I've had a very blessed journey doing jiu-jitsu for sure.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I'm hoping along this adventure I'm having, I'll have similar experiences to you, because it sounds pretty great.
Will. You absolutely.
So along your progression, because I know for me, the one that I got hung up on a little bit was wanting my purple belt more, because everyone around me seemed to be getting purple belts more, but I thought I was doing good, and I got really hung up on the belt. Again, trying to draw people in jiu-jitsu where they may hit that stagnant point, like, hey, why am I not getting the next belt? How do you coach students in the realm of saying, hey, because now I understand, hey, it's jiu-jitsu that matters. The belt or color doesn't. So how do you talk to those students and when they bring that to your attention?
That's the thing. I was very hung up on the purple belt myself too. None of the other belts I was too concerned about for that, but that particular belt was I can identify with that. It was very similar.
Why do you think that was?
At the time, I quite honestly, to be perfectly honest with you, is because I was doing a lot of competition and other guys were advancing that weren't being as competitive.
Gotcha.
And looking at the situation now, I realized that it actually benefited me by having to wait long, because it made me hungry. It made me want to perform harder and, not, take a break or, take my foot off the gas when I was really kind of pushing myself. Kept me motivated to keep going. If you, when I see guys now that kind of go through that, the thing is you just have to remind them this, because I've gone through that. Say, look, dude, when you get there, then you're going to be like, okay, now it's the next one. So, you know what I'm saying? It's like you're closer to this belt. Once you're there, you're starting all over. So it's really, just need to focus on the journey, right? That's why they always say focus on the journey, not the destination. Because when it's all said and done, we're all going to get older. We're all going to get our belts. It's all going to happen. It's just a matter of, enjoying the process. Because if you do anything but enjoy the process, then it becomes work, right? And the idea is to keep it fun, right? Because if it wasn't fun, I wouldn't have been doing it for this long, especially, when I first started, I used to have these guys who were my age now, and they go, oh, fuck my back, and this and that. And I'd be like, dude, shut the hell up. And I'm that guy now. Yeah. Right? Now I'm that guy that, looking back on, I know this guy was right. Yeah, I see what he's talking about. So, to anybody that's listening to this is new, do yoga. Definitely take care of your body. Tap if you get, submitted. Don't get tendonitis. Yeah.
No, that's a big thing. I look at your belt and I see so many stripes on there, which means you've been a black belt as long as I've been training jiu-jitsu, which is super cool for me to see, and it's inspiring because okay, I can train that long if I put my mind to it. But it also means you started at a time where, before it was cool to train jiu-jitsu, before YouTube and there were schools everywhere. At that time, did you have maybe the foresight or see that jiu-jitsu was going to become as big as it was? I mean, what was your view then and view now, seeing where jiu-jitsu in total is?
See, again, that goes back to, when jiu-jitsu came to the United States, the original exposure to it was MMA, right? And I knew MMA would be big. There was no doubt in my mind, right? And I wanted to be able to, I wanted to be a part of that on some capacity. And I knew that I have to, I already knew that I was a grappler, but I didn't know what jiu-jitsu was. And so when I saw jiu-jitsu, I was like, that's what I need to do, right? It's just an extension. Basically, we're doing wrestling with submission holds, which is kind of what pro wrestling really is, right? So once I started to train, like I said, every day I would learn something new. I just couldn't wait to try it on somebody in the next class. I mean, it just kept me in there. I was so motivated and just dedicated. Like it just, I was just excited.
Yeah.
I just couldn't wait. I mean, it was just, it was an obsession for me, really. And again, I would do private lessons. I would train when I wasn't supposed to train. I mean, we were doing a lesson one day, a private lesson, after doing a morning class, and I'd been training so much. I remember I stood up and just fainted because I was just pushing myself too hard. It was like, that was like day 9 without a break. And, I knew that jiu-jitsu eventually would get popular with the gi. I just didn't know how long it would take. And the thing is it was a slow progression. And when you look at it now, it's just gotten so, adapted by everybody. But now you're seeing, children start very early. So all these parents that started when they were younger, they're putting their kids in it. And, with females, it's just getting so popular. You get a lot of, very talented women, where before, you'd get some talented women, right? Because the pool of them wasn't so big. But now it's so much bigger. There's so much talent. Everyone's just makes the level just continues to get better and better. And like I said, for me, that makes me have to,
keep your game going. I love it. As a coach, when you're walking around the room, what are, again, for people who may make that leap to try jiu-jitsu, what are certain things you're seeing from an outside perspective? Because at times, hey, they're in it, they're grappling, they don't see themselves, right? What are you seeing that's a positive asset to jiu-jitsu, and that's a negative thing that they should be aware of when stepping onto the mat?
I think if there was any sort of there's nothing but positive stuff, right? Because everyone's going to go through the process, right? The consistency and the dedication over a long period of time is what changes the person, which creates that person, right? Mm-hmm. The only negative thing that I can think of is when people want it too fast, right? When they want to skip the process, right? Mm-hmm. When they want to just, they want it without having to do the work, right? It's like, if it takes you 3 months, let's just take 3 months, right? Mm-hmm. So I trained for 3 months, you trained for 3 months. Well, what matters is how many times did I train? How focused was my training? I might have trained, twice a day. You might have trained twice a week, right? So the thing is you have to, really kind of ask yourself, or be honest with yourself about the work that you put in to get the end result. I mean, you can train a little and do a lot, but if you train a lot, you're going to get a lot more. Yeah. So I think that, when they're training and they just kind of, they rush it and they're just getting a little bit too excited and just kind of, they sacrifice the technique because they want to get as many reps in as they can. That's kind of the one thing that I press them not to do. And there's a saying to that, about doing it slowly and smooth. I think the saying is, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, look, you just do less repetitions, but you do them correctly, and then over time the reps will come, the technique will come, and then perfection.
Yeah, definitely. We're sitting here talking to people, trying to give them advice about jiu-jitsu, making that leap, maybe at the different stages of jiu-jitsu. But what was some of the best jiu-jitsu advice that you received?
Oh man, it was so much. I think it was a lot of little metaphors and quotes. I think that I heard just, too many to remember, but one that stood out to me was, one hand washes the other and they both wash the face, was like my favorite. And then one of my first professors...
Can you explain what that means?
You work together, right? It's we work together to make each other better. We're a team, even in battle, we're a team. I can't get better without you. You make me better, I make you better. Even if you're beating me, you're making me better. So it's a collaboration, right? And I can't explain it as good as it was explained to me that day. It was quite a while ago, and the way it was said was very, very, very good.
I like
very
that.
cool. And there was a couple other ones. I mean, just the things about respect in class that I, was just unaccustomed to. Like when we would go to spar, how one of my professors would say, please, like, please. And, just certain things that to this day I still do. I copied them because I thought they were very respectful and classy things, and just a better way to conduct myself. And I still do some of those things now.
Cool.
I like I said, for jiu-jitsu, if you do it long enough, it definitely changes you as a person, right? It makes you a better person, physically, emotionally, mentally. There's really not much downside. Obviously, it can be a little tough on your body, but so can anything else.
Yeah.
But the benefits much outweigh the damage to your.
Yeah. To that point, I think it's inevitable. I've been in jiu-jitsu. I'm sure you have as well. What are maybe some tips and tricks to get over those injuries, maybe in practice, but then more mentally, that where the people who may get hurt for the first time in jiu-jitsu, if they're going to have a long career at it, maybe it steers them away, it pulls them off the mat for too long, or maybe they don't come back,
Well, definitely you want to be as flexible as you can be, or at least, focus on some stretching, because, some of my partners back in the day, they avoided stretching, and then they had injuries, and it was ironic how their physical therapy programs all consisted of doing more stretching. So that kind of changed their outlook on that, because before it just wasn't cool to stretch.
Yeah.
The other things are, really is stop having an ego, because the ego is going to be your biggest enemy. If you think I'm not going to tap, because when I first started training, that was the mentality: don't tap. Make the guy hurt you in the academy. Well, no, that's that mentality is outdated. So I think just take care of yourself. Tap when you need to tap. And just get back in there and push yourself harder. But definitely some core work. Right, strengthens your body.
Yeah.
Definitely some flexibility, and just be consistent with hydration too. That's another thing that I skip a lot of.
Yeah. Especially when the room is hot like tonight, and we're training hard and having a good time. Pools of sweat everywhere. Yeah, those are the best kind of nights. There's, I'm sure, at times in your career of jiu-jitsu where you've hit plateaus, right? We all kind of go through it in the progression of learning. What are some of your strategies to get through those plateaus when you're feeling kind of just stuck?
Well, that's the discipline. See, that's the concept of discipline is doing what you should do, whether you want to do it or not, right? And in the end, we can, see what you're talking about is showing up. Right? Getting to the academy becomes the hardest part, right? And everybody knows that going to the gym is the hardest part, but once you're at the gym, you're going to put in work. That's going to shift your focus and, your motivation. So you just have to show up, right? But it's really easy to make excuses, right? Especially if you're sore, or if it's raining, if I got other things to do. I mean, in the end, it's finding your rhythm, right? Once you find a rhythm and you start to really see improvements and you consistently grow, you're not going to want to take too much of a break. But the plateau you're talking about, that's inevitable, right?
Yeah.
We're all going to experience that. The thing is you just don't want to let it be a long plateau, right? That's why breaks aren't bad. I mean, I've taken some, 4 weeks off here, 3 weeks off here. I've had some pretty, I've had some surgeries and some other rehabilitation type times where I've had to, focus on that. But, what happens is you come back and you're remotivated. It ignites your interest in jiu-jitsu, makes you want to train hard. And the thing is when you take a long break, you come back, you're going to get your ass kicked a little bit, and that's going to make you really want to, double down on your efforts and get back to where you were before you stopped. So, I mean, in a word, it's all about focus.
Cool. No, that's wonderful. Yeah, that's great advice. On the mats, maybe at different stages throughout your life, what is your game specifically? You slapping bum? What are you doing?
I'm trying to stay on top. That's the thing. All my buddies, the smaller guys, are always guard players. But it always was to be on top. And I'll tell you why. Because when I was in second grade,
this goes back that far.
I saw a fight on the playground, and it was under the monkey bars. And I remember the kid's name was Ryan Hanley, and he was fighting another kid, and he mounted the guy. And I always was just in my mind like, dude, he is kicking his ass right now. And Ryan was a smaller guy fighting a bigger guy. And then when I saw Royce Gracie in the UFC mount somebody, I was like, that's what I want to learn right there. That's a move, I want to learn that.
Cool.
And even to now, all these years later, it's like I am fixated on always getting the mount. For me, every time I train, it's only about getting the mount. And I have to, for me, it's what I want. I want the mount. And you got to be on top to get the mount.
Absolutely.
You know, so.
For sure. Well, what is your favorite submission from the mount?
I like them all. I like any, you know, but if I had to choose one, the arm triangle.
The arm triangle?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one.
Because I have a few little, you know, traps I can set.
Cool. I got to get better at that one. I blame not being good on it right now because I have long arms and can't close the space, but that's just not, that's because I haven't practiced it enough, so maybe I'll have to get those details from you. I'm sure you've had moments of Eureka on the mat where being around Jiu-Jitsu so much, maybe you've seen something or developed something that's, you know, maybe the move has been around, but no one had it specifically shown you that move. You know, do you remember a moment that was like that for you?
You're saying what was I doing something that later I was shown a move? Something like where it clicked. I was like, that's how that works. Many times actually. Yeah, like a lot of the De La Riva tripod stuff. I kind of figured some of that stuff out. Okay. Right, but I was doing it totally incorrectly. And then when someone would show those moves, I'd be like, that's how you do it. And I kind of had I kind of was just experimenting with things, but you know, it wasn't original, but somebody else was doing it. But then it made a connection, and I was able to, you know, make that effective part of my game right away. Yeah, cool. That, you know, that happened a lot very early on, where you would be doing different things, and all of a sudden you'd be like, that's how that works.
Right. When you and two of your friends get in a room and you're just by yourself experimenting, playing, hey, what if you do this and I do that? Yeah, and you're just having jiu-jitsu fun.
I didn't know what I didn't know. Yep. Especially like a lot with butterfly guard. Like you're talking about, like tonight we were training butterfly guard. I was kind of trying that stuff, and then what happened is when someone started to really work with me on different sweeps and hooks from the butterfly guard, it all made it very, you know, made it very possible to be effective with it, because I was doing it, but I wasn't trained with it. I didn't have the real technique. And then once I had someone show me, this is how this works, I was like, okay, now I got something here.
Yeah, no, that's great. If you could change one thing about the culture of Jiu-Jitsu, or Jiu-Jitsu in general, what would it be?
It's a very broad question. If I could change anything, if there's something that I don't care for.
Yeah,
anything
think about Jiu-Jitsu.
You know, the only thing that, you know, I think the only thing that I think can kind of get in the way of, you know, relationships in Jiu-Jitsu abroad is just there's a lot of opinion, right? I guess we call it politics, we could call it whatever, but like, you know, everybody has their own idea of things, and that's you know, that's a good thing because we're all different. But I just sometimes I think that, you know, there's an attitude where things can only be one way, and if it's not that way, it's not right. And I think Jiu-Jitsu, you know, I think over the years it's definitely got more of people are having, you know, there's a much more open-mindedness across the board. But for a very long time it wasn't like that. So that's the only thing that I didn't care for. But you can already see that there's a significant change in that way of thinking. A lot of the stuff that, you know, was very prominent when I first started training has changed considerably.
Cool.
So.
Oh, that's great. Outside of Jiu-Jitsu, right? Because it is such a big part of our lives. But I believe, hey, we need other things that are good for our soul. What is good for your soul outside of Jiu-Jitsu?
I like to roller skate. I like inline skating.
Oh, yeah?
I like to ride, quad skates indoors.
Okay.
And I like to ride inline skates outdoors.
Where'd that passion come from?
Skating part as I was a little kid.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. I liked watching roller derby when I was younger too. You know, but I like to roller skate. Like, I know everyone likes to skateboard, but I always preferred them on my feet.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Absolutely.
And actually, very soon I'll do an inline skating marathon. So that's my goal for this year.
What does that consist of? I've never even heard of that.
Doing a marathon with skates on your feet. 26 miles. Yeah, like you have a 10K, a half marathon, and you have a 26. You decide. So it's going to be in in the fall in Florida, but there's another one in the summer before that. So I'm gonna, I'm gonna do it.
That's
to
awesome.
Take some training. Actually, there's some guys I know that were, very prominent in speed skating, and we're gonna be they're in the Winter Olympics right now.
Wow,
So
that's awesome.
yeah.
Any closing thoughts? Anything you want to share about the world of jiu-jitsu with us?
I think if anyone who's watching this is on the fence, who hasn't trained before, definitely give it a shot. Just find a local school. I don't think team name or anything is really that important. Obviously my team is Gracie Bob, but all teams are good. All teams are great, actually. You want to make it as consistent as possible. So wherever you can go, be as consistent. I think the two most important things, right, for a person who isn't training, or even a person who is training and has been training, the most important thing is obviously consistency, but even more important than that is environment, right? If you have a group of people who are fun to be around, they make you laugh, you can just enjoy being with them, that makes it that much better,
Yeah.
And then, if they're whooping you, you're whooping them, you're helping them, they're helping you. That's the best part about it, is because everybody grows. Again, one hand washes the other, they both wash the face.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Professor, thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's been a very welcoming environment. We're in the Gracie Baja, Northeast Seattle, as you guys can see here. Come in and check it out. I'll put the address and Instagram and link to the website and everything in the show notes so people can see. I really appreciate your time.
And I do want to say one more
Yeah.
thing. I want to thank the guys at bjjgorilla.com.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Guys, if you've made it this far along, finished the interview, I just want to thank you again for supporting me along this journey, and hopefully you got something awesome out of that interview. I really enjoy doing these, learning so much about life, jiu-jitsu, and everyone has such a unique and interesting perspective. So I hope you got something out of that that you can take with you. And one last reminder, for 10% off on any Jocko Fuel products or Origin USA products, go to jockofuel.com or originusa.com. Support yourself by getting some awesome products, supplements, protein shakes, greens, all that good stuff. It helps support me along this journey, and again, support yourself and an American-made company. So yeah, jockofuel.com. Check it out, guys. Thank you very much.